Hello, good evening, welcome to Lockdown Sessions, episode 3 and a bit, because we did one last week as well, which was lots of fun, and actually I ended up playing 3 songs off the Songs for the Road album, which was maybe an oversight on my part, because, you know, don't really want to repeat myself, do I? So nice of you to tune in on a Sunday. I realise that now that things are opening up in the world, there are other places you could be and other things you could be doing, so I appreciate you staying at home with me. So tonight what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-examine, pick over the bones of my second solo album, Songs for the Road, and play you some of, not all of the songs, because, you know, we've only got so long to be able to do this. And maybe tell you some of the stories around it, because I chose to do this album in particular because it's probably the most interesting record, not so much in what's on the record, but what went into making what's on the record on the record. It was a very, to say the least, difficult process of making the record. Writing it was not so difficult, but certainly getting it done and was tricky. And I don't think it's any coincidence that this is the only solo record I've ever made with the help of a record label, and I think that was not to blame for it, but it touches upon some of my own little strange foibles and difficulties that I have dealing with, you know, working with others, you know. Kind of lone wolf is my thing, and as soon as other people start messing with my babies, I start to get a bit protective over my territory. So I'll get into that a bit later. Let's start with a song, shall we? Let's start where it all kicked off, over here on the piano. So I'm going to play the opening track of the album. Now, Go to Hell was written actually sometime before my first album came out. I wrote it. It was something that sort of came up while I was trying to write a single for Easy World, and it was not appropriate for what we were at then. And it sort of didn't really seem to go on the first solo record either. But when it came to doing Songs for the Road, I sort of felt like I had a shot at actually doing a version of it that would work. So speaking of versions of it that would work, here's one I've never tried before. I never treated you so mean, like that's a reason to be proud. My love, I know it's been so long, but I thought that I'd just call around. With that smile that says, yeah, well, you see, I knew you'd wait for me. I can hear you say, the day I fall down at your feet, go to hell, go to hell. I thank you for your understanding. I won't be long. For the things round the house you left unthrown. And hey, I know it's been so long, but I thought I'd call. And I'll just come crawling back in time to hear you say, go to hell, let's go to hell, go to hell, go to hell. you think I'd wait around for you to go to hell? 'Cause I don't deserve you, you don't deserve this, so tell me, hey. Just go to hell. 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 Oh, thank you, thank you. You're very kind. All right, so that was Go to Hell. It sort of thematically fits more with the first album than the second, given that it's sort of a sister song to something like I Don't Care What You Call Me, essentially sort of an apology anthem with a big slice of self-loathing in there. And I'd recorded it as a demo before, long before the first album came out, and sort of I don't think I even sort of played it to anyone. It didn't even go on any of the little giveaway things that I was CDs that I was making at gigs. I don't know why. I sort of felt like it wasn't right or representative. But if you want to hear the version that I did, I've actually released a whole load of stuff onto my Bandcamp page. Is that what you call it? Shop thing. I mean, everything's free, so can't really call it a shop, can we? So I've put a whole lot of songs on there, including the earliest demos of the songs, some interesting live versions or sort of radio sessions that help to sort of describe the journey from the very beginning to the versions that ended up on the record, the ones that you know and love and hold to your collective bosom. Also, I have this little thing here that sort of tells me your messages on that little message board thing. So at various points, I may pause and look over here, and if you have any questions for me, then I may even answer them. I think there's about a 30-second lag though between what I see and what you write. So you got to get your timing just right. I would suggest as soon as I'm getting towards like the last verse of a song, start typing them out then, because then I might see them in the next gap. As a little tip for you. I don't have a set list for this evening, other than I've just written down all the songs that are on Songs for the Road, and I shall just pick from them, seemingly at random. Let's do another song, and then I'll get into the the meat of the stories. Which one? Let's do this one. So one of the things that changed between the first album and the second album being made and released and all that nonsense was I signed a record deal with Columbia Records in the US, and that had me over in America quite a lot, and there was much expectation and hope that I would be. I mean, given that this was Bob Dylan's record label saying it, I felt the will to take it at least semi-seriously. That they were suggesting that I might be some kind of next Bob Dylan, and I was cool with that as an idea. But the reality was kind of different. So having spent a lot of time in America, I mean, I fell in love with the place. For starters, I've always liked going to America. It being the birthplace of rock and roll kind of meant a lot to me, and all my favorite music has always been American music. So being able to go along there and legitimately show up in music venues that I had heard of as the stuff of legend, and to arrive in New York City and have them expecting me was incredible. It was insane. Which is not to say that my love for America was unconditional. I always had my quarrels with their administration at the time, Mr. Bush #2, who at the time I thought was about as bad as a president could possibly ever get. Those days. Anyway, so another thing that I found very striking was quite how religious America was and still is, and it made me feel that Britain is a far more secular place, and obviously everyone's entitled to their own religious faiths. I don't want to tell people what to believe or not to believe. I know what I think on the subject, but I started to sort of feel a bit hard done by with the whole given that there was a lot of Christianity was often being used by some people who's seem to be doing some pretty mean things in the name of God, and that sort of bothered me, and it kind of thought, well, hang on, how is it that a couple of Christians can conspire to go to war based on a great deal of false witness bearing, and because they are people of supposed faith, they all go to heaven, and me as someone who tries their best and doesn't start wars with people, I have to roast in hell for all of eternity. It seemed like it was a little unjust, and if there was a God, then maybe they might have a problem with that. So I wrote this song about the fact I wasn't going to be allowed to get into heaven. Everyone come together, making no kind of sense, and these thoughts that I cling to, they're gonna harm my defense. Well, I'll throw rocks at the devil with my faith wearing thin, but I won't scream down St. Peter when he don't let me in. I will work like a pack horse every hour of the day. I will drink like a preacher, I'll make these spirits go away. I will sing like an angel with an ear for a sin, but I won't scream down St. Peter when he don't let me in. So when I'm gone, will you miss me? Yeah, I'm sure that you will. When I'm far from the terror and the lies and the kill. Yes, but there is nothing so deadly as the forces of right, or some fool with a shotgun in a house painted white. Ain't it hard now, my brother, to try and do what you should, when the shameless and the wicked, they dress the same as the good? My intentions are honest, though my chances are slim. So I won't scream down St. Peter when he don't let me in. So everyone come together, making no kind of sense. Yes, and these words that I cling to can only harm my defense. Well, I've embraced imperfection. It's alright not to win. So I won't scream down St. Peter when he don't let me in. Yeah, I won't scream down St. Peter when he don't let me in. Thank you so much. So, this is why the album was difficult for me. I had decided after the relative success of my first album, not commercial success, God no, it was successful in the sense that it opened up a lot of doors for me, and it got me, certainly the biggest and most fancy record deals I've ever had on both sides of the Atlantic, and indeed round the world. So I got to tour in America and the US and even Australia, and it was fantastic. And my stock had never been higher, and so it was. I really wanted to be given the opportunity to make the second album the same way I made the first, on my own, in my own time, in my own place, in my own space. Be the writer, the performer of everything, the producer, the whole shebang, because people liked what I did the first time, and my brief from my label was literally just go and do the same thing again, and so that's what I thought I was doing. So what I did was I took some of the money that I had been advanced to make this second album, and I rather than getting time in a existing studio, I rented my own premises. Nothing fancy. It was like an industrial unit on an industrial estate, and I put all my recording gear in. I bought a couple of new things, nothing too fancy, and I put all my instruments in there, and I just gave myself all the time that I wanted to make the record that I wanted to make. And I got to a stage where I was, I felt like I was getting there. I was on the right sort of track, and so I went to the record label and I played them what I had, and they absolutely fucking hated it. Like it was. I literally had. I mean, literally. When I say literally, I mean actually. Literally had things thrown at me by my A&R manager at the time. And this is as someone who had a pretty charmed life as a songwriter. I'd never really tasted rejection, from certainly not from people who were on my side, who were already friends and knew me. My star had only ever risen up to that point, and I wasn't prepared for it, and I'd put a lot into making what I thought was the beginnings of a good record, and I was told in no uncertain terms that we have a big problem on our hands, and this is not gonna happen like this, and it broke me. It actually broke my brain a little bit. I was standing in Victoria Tube Station, and I felt something physically go pop in my brain, and this just sort of warm wave of liquid sorrow just melted throughout my head, and from that point I was pretty damaged, and finishing the record would prove very difficult, because it was a real blow to my confidence and to my ability to even evaluate what I was doing and whether it was any good, which is a very big part of being a musician. You have to have a very keen and honed sense of whether what you do is any good or whether it's a complete pile of rubbish. And if you lose that ability to discriminate with regard to your own work, then I think you're in trouble. And I had lost that, and I needed help from from all kinds of quarters, from my manager, from my record labels on both sides of the ocean, and friends and family and things. It was a very odd time for me. I don't know whether what I had was depression or what. I never got myself evaluated. I was just trying to get the record finished, and it did get finished in the end. But it was a lot more complicated than the nice simple do-it-yourself record that I started trying to make, and sort of central to it was a song called Train, which I had written in America while I was there, listened to a lot of country radio, and kind of got into that sort of that way that American country music could take little Irish elements and these sort of folkish elements and blend them in together into this really kind of lovely musical form. So I was listening to like these that bluegrass stations and just really enjoying that feeling, and I kind of thought that was a style that I could take on myself, but I was told I was not allowed to make something that sounded like a country record. And so what happened in the studio was the version that I had done, which was in this sort of lilting, walty 6/8 time signature. We rammed into a straight 4/4, which is the one that ended up on the record. And I like both versions, but they're so very different. And at the time, I really struggled to let go of what was my the way I had written the song, the way I thought about the song. It was very difficult to compromise. I've always found compromise very difficult, which is one of the reasons that I work alone, because I don't like having these conversations about changing things. They make me very uncomfortable. Okay, so I've just glanced over here, and someone said, "Can we hear any of those early versions that were rejected?" Yes, you can. I stuck it all on Bandcamp today, so if you, I should have put a link on here. I'm terrible at things like that, but do your own damn homework. If you go to, I'm guessing it's Bandcamp, and then put my name in it, and I stuck them up there today, so you can hear some of the rejected songs. What I've done is I went back to the original sessions. I only found 3 of them, and I opened up the files and listened to it, and I was like, okay, with the benefit of a few years of experience, I found it was actually quite easy to fix them, and without re-recording anything or adding anything, just by making a few edits and doing a few mix moves, I found. I feel like if I had done that at the time, or known somebody who had a higher skill set who could have done that, then maybe we would have been okay. But it went a different way, and for me it went a way that went very dark very quickly, and it stayed very dark for a long time. I think it was years and years before I came out of whatever funk I was in, and when I did, I was not the same as I was before. That's for sure. Anyway, more on that later. So I'm going to play you Train. In fact, I'm going to try and just play both versions of it. One leading into the other, just to see. Let's grab another. Where did I put that harmonica? There it is. Now really, I want to play this with 2 different harmonicas, but I'm going to try and do it with just the one. So the first half is going to be kind of like how I had originally written it, and then I'm going to put a little change up halfway through and see if you notice. So the thing for me with 6/8, it's always for any sort of music nerds. It's not nerdy really to know about time signatures, but 6/8 always been one of my favorite timings. I write in that time signature way more than any other, I think, which is a little bit strange because 4/4 is the normal. So 4/4 is anything where you can just count to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like that. 6/8 has that more sort of lilting Irish thing. So it's like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it's a bit different from 3/4, which is like more like of an umpar waltz. Because it has like a different drop on every 3. It's a beautiful and very I find it very quite emotive 6/8 as a time signature, which I think is probably why usually if I'm writing songs that have a very sort of emotional core, I'll just instinctively always stick it in 6/8 without thinking about it. So enough about that. I've just yabbered on for ages. Let's play another damn song, shall we? Here we go. And then I promise I will answer some questions. Well, the sun's coming up and the dust it is clearing. Down the line I am hearing there's this train coming in. I left my home and my girl, tried to find someplace better, but I never could forget her. So let this train take me home. Oh, please, my darling, forgive what I've done. I've found nothing, just some big lonely world. So take me back, please, my lover. Take me back, please, my lover. It took a train to discover I cannot be without you, girl. So 4/4 is a lot more kind of like a straight rock and roll thing, and that's kind of what it became. I was young, I was green, prone to foolish decisions. Had what I thought was ambition, yes, and this will to be free. Yeah, but freedom's just some word, don't believe has a meaning. So on this train I am leaving, I'm trying to get me back home. So please, my darling, forgive what I've done. I found nothing, just some big lonely world. So take me back, please, my lover. Take me back, please, my lover. It took a train to discover I cannot be without you, girl. Pour another cup of coffee. Pretty soon I'll be leaving. I'm done petty thieving, hitching rides and drinking beer. So tired of having friends just to keep out of prison. Man, this life really isn't all I hoped it would be. So please, my darling, forgive what I've done. I found nothing, just some big lonely world. So take me back, please, my lover. Take me back, please, my lover. It took a train to discover I cannot be without you, girl. Took a train to discover that I cannot be without you, girl. Took a train to discover I can't be without you, girl. Oh, let's have a round of applause. Okay. Let's answer some of your questions now. I hope you've timed it right. Okay, David, was there ever a studio demo of Go to Hell with the train sound effects and the spoken word intro recorded? Okay, so early adopter here. At the very, very early outset when I started playing Go to Hell on tour, because it was a song that was as old as the first album. When I was touring the first album, I would often open with a version of Go to Hell that started off with the sound of a train, train wheels, and it would kind of be rhythmical, and I would. This was very early on in my solo thing, and I didn't really know what it was gonna end up like, and I had pretensions of, well, let's face it, pretension, and so I loved. I was obsessed with this Tom Waits film that I'd seen from his Austin City Limits performance of 1978, and there was a lot of like talking in it and setting the scene, and I guess I really wanted to do that and to make the show atmospheric and to try and transport the audience to, you know, to some other world, and make it known that this isn't just like someone's going to get up and sing songs. Like I want you to feel like you're being taken on a journey. So I would start with this train sound, and I would sort of tell some sort of monologue setting up the beginning of Go to Hell, and then me and Francis Law and Joke Man Tennessee on bass. That was our first band, just the three of us, and then we'd start the show, and it would be like that. And I was told by my booking agent at the time that, like, that was a bit weird, probably shouldn't do that, and maybe he was right. And anyway, we stopped doing that. It maybe wasn't quite me. I don't think I really had the chops to do that. Anyway, in answer to your question, Nala, no, there was never a recording of it, as far as I'm aware. I had a pretty good trawl through all the existing recordings of everything from that period, and I didn't come across that version. I don't think I really want to hear it again, because, like I said, I think that the pretension of it might just blow my mind. Okay, you released an EP of re-recorded songs from this album a few years ago. Do they reflect your original vision? Okay, so I put out this. Well, I say I put it out, like I sort of snuck out and sold it at gigs. A CD called Songs on the Road, which was a chance to give some life to the original recordings. But those were the original recordings with the original mixes. What I've subsequently done was actually sort of polish them up and make them kind of feel what I think sounds much better, like sort of the job that I should have done in the first place. So yes, there are now 4 or 5 songs from the original ones that were axed that are now out in the world. So that's all of them now, because the other songs that came out on the album were taken from my original recordings that were just sort of bludgeoned into shape by my good friend James Brown, and that's another story. So the way we salvaged the album from the mess that I had delivered was Action Stations. It was a real I suppose, salvage operation, damage limitation, whatever. So we were very hurriedly booked into a studio in London with a pair of producers, Kevin Bacon, not that Kevin Bacon, and Jonathan Quarmby, to record like what were deemed to be the singles. So we threw a lot of money at doing that. And then everything else, like the album tracks, I was allowed to still kind of have some sort of ownership over, and to be part of the production for that. And so for that, what we did was contacted this fella called James Brown, who had been the engineer and mixer of the Easy World single "You and Me," the sort of loud, bombastic version, if you know what I'm talking about, of a single called "You and Me." And I really got on well with James, and I loved his work. I really liked his studio attitude and his studio chops, and he did a bunch of Easy World B-sides. Again, some of our more popular recordings, like the track "Better Ways to Self-Destruct" was one that he did. And I really liked sort of being in the studio with James. He felt like a really a safe, familiar pair of hands for helping me with that. So we called up James, and he came over from America, where he was living, to Eastbourne to help get those songs to the finish line. And he put in a hell of a shift. He had a lot of work to do to get them from where I had them to where they needed to be. And I think he did an incredible job. My favorite songs are the ones that I did with James. I don't know if that's because it felt like a lot more of a sort of safe, loving, nurturing environment doing them with James. So Go to Hell came from that. So did Requiem, and So You Fell, Song for the Road. I mean, actually, yeah, my favorite ones on the record, which is not to denigrate the others, but you probably shouldn't have favorites. Anyway, but I cannot understate how vital it was to have brought James Brown, not that James Brown, different guy, into the family, and he remains within the family, and has mixed every record I've made since, and produced Animal Spirits, is an absolute wonderful man, a savior of my musical life. I would not be here without James. So there you go. Back to your questions. Are there any? Was the label who was against a British label in America? Okay, well, so the label who threw it out was my British label Independiente. I'm pretty sure the Americans would have done the same. It's essentially the problem was, I think, that we didn't know each other as well as we thought we did. I don't think any of the record label people really knew what I was about. That essentially I was kind of I think when my first album came out, people sort of misinterpreted it as some kind of cool, like, hipster thing, which it was never that. I was never that guy. I'm kind of a geeky, awkward Southern English fella. I'm not. I was never going to move to Shoreditch or Williamsburg. That was never me. But I think certainly in America they perceived that was what I was about. And so I think the idea was that when I went to make another album, I would make one that sort of fitted what they thought was me. But in the end, in my excitement, I was like, okay, I want to do a country song. I want to do a New Orleans jazz thing with a big brass section. I want to do like pomp and big glitzy show tune things. And I want to do I wanted it to just be what we eventually ended up calling Death by Eclectic, which is pretty much summarized every record that I've ever made since. I'm a musical enthusiast. I get really excited by music, and I wanted to sort of dive into as many musical forms as I could, and just like have fun with it, and just see what I could do, and if it was, and see if I could make it work. And I guess I didn't make it work. Certainly not to everyone's satisfaction. So there we go. Let's have a look. Did you know David Lynch at the time? Yes, I did know Dave Lynch at the time. He actually ended up the version of Go to Hell that's on the the version of Decimate that's on the album is one that Dave Lynch mixed. Dave Lynch is also another someone who worked on the record who has a namesake of a very famous other person. So yeah, we ended up with Kevin Bacon, James Brown, and David Lynch. An interesting combination of people working on the record entirely by coincidence. So we didn't stipulate in advance that you have to share a name with some kind of legend. But yeah, David Lynch did a bit of mixing on there as well. Right. Okay. I think that's all I can see that looks interesting. Keep them coming, and I'll maybe pause for some questions later on. Let's do another song, shall we? We've done that one. I did this one the other night, but I'm gonna bash it out because I don't often play it, and see if I can remember how it goes. Oh, fill her up to the top. Well, I got nowhere else to be. Oh, today, well, I woke up and the whole world was there for me. A hard time comes around, I just can't make it out, 'cause I'm way past caring. Oh, nobody tells me what to do. Oh God, cried my last for you. There's not a soul I answer to. No one's put out when I misbehave, or if I don't come home for days. I got nothing to explain, so you give me the same again. To the top. Well, there's no easy way to say I'm not okay, and I'm drained away a little further every day. The last time comes around, I just can't make it out, and I'm way past caring. Nobody tells me what to do. I didn't mean a thing to you. There's not a soul I answer to. No one's put out when I misbehave, or if I don't come home for days. Well, I got nothing to explain, so you give me the same again. So that's also a song that was older than the first album, but it didn't feel like it really worked on that one, and I wanted to sort of wait until I could hire a horn section and a string section and get my Vegas on and get totally razzmatazz. I was sort of thinking about those Elvis fat jumpsuit years, which is for me I guess with the exception of the very early rock and roll stuff, my favorite era of Elvis Presley. Whom I love a great deal. Right, let's see if there's any other questions. If Songs for the Road was made into a musical, what would the plot be? Oof. I don't know. I think that's maybe one of the problems with the record. Pretty much everything else that I've done has some sort of overarching theme. And I think maybe one of the problems with Songs for the Road was it was more of a sort of a collection of songs because it spans such a long period of songwriting. Like I say, some of them are from before the first album, and some of them sort of arrived fairly late in the day. I mean, I say a long span. It's probably it probably covers 3 or 4 years of songwriting, so that's not actually that abnormal, really. Um, but yeah, it didn't really sort of happen in a thematic sort of way. Like the first album has all its sort of apology and self-loathing, and then the obviously Animal Spirits has its macroeconomics thing. Charge, I think, is my album largely about my relationship with the music business and kind of forgiveness between each other. Let the Hard Times Roll was essentially my album of getting back on the horse after this record knocked me off it. And I feel those themes are all in there quite heavily. But Songs for the Road, I think, was a strange one. And maybe that's one of the reasons that it was hard to sort of pin down its identity in recording it, and why it was so eclectic is maybe the songs themselves didn't really have a thread. I mean, I think it's probably maybe my strongest collection of songs of any record that I've made. As far as I think there's 9 songs on there, and I think they're all very strong, if I do say so myself. I've learned in later years to to not mind giving myself a compliment like that. I used to be way more self-deprecating, but I'm just too damn cool for that now. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes, I'd like to know the original order, please. So, I mean, a lot of what I'm saying, anyone who's read my book, and let's face it, I'm sure most of you have, because if you're one of the few people who's going to tune in to watch me on a Sunday night, you're probably something of a completist, and you'll be aware that I wrote a book. Where is it? I've got one over here somewhere. Here it is. You can buy it from like my merch site. I still think there's still loads of them available. So what this was I wrote a book after I worked out it was 10 years since I quit my day job to become a musician. It's actually damn near on 20 now, so I need to write another installment of the book. And I might do. You never know if I get a bit of time on my hands. Anyway, so a lot of the book deals with I suppose the central plot is Songs for the Road and the damage that it did. It covers a lot of the book. So I think a lot of people will be aware of some of the trials and tribulations of making the record. And one of the difficulties I had, and one of the arguments I had with the record label was, and it sounds like a stupid thing, is the order that the tracks go in on the album. And it's always something that I've been really particular about. And I have my opinions, and my opinions are very strong. And I'd come up with my track listing, and to be perfectly honest, I can't remember what it is, but I do know that when the record came out in America, by the time it eventually came out, I should probably mention what happened in America later on as well, because that was a whole nother adventure. By the time it came out in America, it had my track listing the way I wanted it. In the UK, we reached a horrible impasse where the order that I insisted on the songs being in was just unacceptable. They would not allow it. And I couldn't accept it another way. And I in the end it was me who backed down, because it was like the record just wouldn't come out. And maybe I should have stuck to my guns and said, well, screw you guys. Clearly our relationship has deteriorated somewhat. Maybe someone else should try and put this record out. But it was, the main point I remember was this: Songs for the Road has to be the last song on the album. It just has to be. And I stand by that to this day. And I realized that at the time I was, I had a lot of issues in my brain, but I wasn't wrong about. I was not wrong about that. You cannot make this record and not have Song for the Road as the last song. It's the last song on a record does a very important job. Like, albums are important to me. It's not just a collection of songs thrown together. It has to have a journey and a through line. And even on a record like this, where there isn't that there isn't like a thematic element that sort of binds everything together. That you still need to be taken on an emotional journey. You've got to be very careful with the listener's ear and with the listener's heart and the listener's mind, and you have to present the record in such an order that you manipulate them in exactly the way that you want to. But also, at the end of the record, you need to leave them with something that sort of sums it up, or leaves them with the ultimate. If you want to give them a message, something to take home, the last song, indeed the last line of the last song, is very important. And I believe in that very strongly. Like, if we're not going to care about how we structure albums, why even bother making albums at all? Like, why even call it that? Why even put them in any order if artistically that doesn't make any difference? So the label idea, and I don't know why this was important, was basically front load. So essentially put the best songs at the beginning of the record. And because Song for the Road was deemed like one of the standout tracks, no one was ever going to play it on the fucking radio, but still, like, it couldn't go at the end. But essentially that was the thing that I wanted. I could have compromised on other things. Everyone was happy with Go to Hell. Like, I wanted Go to Hell first. Everyone was cool with that. But I needed Song for the Road to be the last song, because I choose this. I mean, that's the take home. That's the money shot. That is what I wanted people. The last thing people hear when they listen to that record, I wanted to be. I choose this. I choose this. I choose this. And and the only thing I feel bad about is that we were all robbed of that moment at the end of the record. I love the song And So You Fell, but it's not an album closer. It's not. It's an end of side one maybe, but and I know that I'm clearly way too invested in this, more than I should be. But I just think that was wrong. I don't think the record should have come out in that order. And who gives a shit? Who cares? Like, I'm sure a lot of you like the record, and maybe you wouldn't have liked it any more or less if the songs were in the other order. But I'm telling you now, that's the order they should have been in. And I'm not wrong. I'm absolutely right. And I will say that till my last dying breath. But anyway, let's see what you people are saying. What was your day job? Okay, before I quit my day job, I worked in a record store. There you go, not particularly exciting. It was our price. Obviously, it's not there anymore. It's now a Costa Coffee in Eastbourne. Anyone got any questions about what we're talking about? Everyone's just chatting with each other. That's cool. I'll go back, see if there's anyone. Maybe out of context, but what was the third last song you played last week? It was the only one I didn't know. Well, that's not relevant to what we're talking about now, but I'll tell you anyway. That was actually a new song that I have written. Actually, it's not that new. I wrote it years ago, but I've not recorded it yet. Because I wrote it as a duet to sing with a lady singer, but like I know lots of really great female singers, but there's a particular sort of quality to the voice that I want. I think what it was is I've been trying to pluck up the courage to ask Ingrid Michaelson to do it, because hers is the voice that I want for it. So maybe I'll write to Ingrid and see if she remembers me. Right. Which US artist would you collaborate with? I mean, collaborations are, I don't know. I don't really know if there'd be much point in me collaborating with someone who's a songwriter, because I just don't work well with others. I think when it comes to collaborations, what I'm really interested in now is collaborating with musicians, where I provide like my skill set, which is writing songs and doing a bit of singing. And even though I play a bit of piano and a bit of guitar, I'm honestly, this is not false modesty. I'm not an expert on any of these fronts, and this is apparent whenever I see like proper players doing their thing. Which brings me on to, I should mention this now. The next the next show, I think, which was meant to be Milk and Cookies at the end of this month, I'm still working on it, but I have the opportunity maybe to do a very different kind of show somewhere else, live with a band in a studio. So I think that the 2 weeks from now show might end up being that. So another lockdown sessions, we're going to carry Milk and Cookies over for next time, and a really special show with an incredible band who I've actually recorded a record with that's not out yet. But so what I think we're going to do is we're possibly, I'm not sure on the details yet, but I think we might just play my new record completely, the one that's not out and that you've never heard. We might just do that live, and then at some point in the future, the record will come out, and you will know it because you will have heard versions of it live. Anyway, those musicians are incredible, and I think you'll understand what I'm talking about in a couple of weeks when you see them. David, do you approach songwriting differently now to how you did then? If so, how? I think I approach it differently in that I'm a lot more. I don't think I'm as crazy about it. Like I used to be. I used to be really. I don't know. I used to be really into the idea of it happening by accident. Of like you cannot deliberately write songs. You have to ignore the process of writing songs and let it happen by accident. I think I've learned since then that you can, it is something that you can not necessarily turn on and off, but you can actually work at. And I suppose being a parent now, and not having so much, the luxury of all the time in the world like I used to have. I think you do have to find ways of using your time efficiently. I know efficiency is not really where I like songs to come from, but I think it always used to be that, like, I have to have my head in the right place to write songs, and it would always just be something you ignore and you wait for your head to get in the right place. But then, like, when you've got kids, you've got to damn well learn to get your head in the place when you've got a spare 5 minutes. So I think maybe my approach has changed in that regard. Should we do another song? I feel like I'm yakking a lot tonight, but there's a lot of like I say, this is the reason I had to write a book. There's a lot to be said about this record in particular. Let's which one should we do now? I'm not going to play Decimate because I feel like I pretty much played that quite a lot last week. Done that. Okay. Let's do this one. So this is the song that did go at the end of the album. And it's a sad song, so I'm sorry about that. It's a song that I wrote about a barmaid in a nightclub in Eastbourne who me and my friends knew on a sort of superficial level. We weren't close, but we knew her name and we knew she was friendly and was really nice and was always a pleasure to see. And then we showed up there one week, and I mean, obviously it was pretty. We were in our 30s and still going to nightclubs, so I don't know what was going on with that. But anyway, we found out that she died and that she'd taken her own life, and it was surprising, obviously, and it. I didn't really know a lot at the time about. I was very young for my years. I didn't really know a lot about sort of depression and mental health and things like that. And so there was part of me that was thinking, oh, maybe like we should have made more of an effort to tell her that we thought she was really cool and really nice, but like barely knew the girl. But anyway, it was a real shock and very saddening, even though like it wasn't. The loss was a superficial one, but it was. I just felt really sad that anyone felt like that was their that was their only option. It still breaks my heart to think that anybody goes out like that. So this is a song that I wrote. I like the song. I like the fact that I wrote it, but I don't think it's the greatest attempt at writing a song on this subject. I think maybe at this stage in my songwriting development, I maybe lacked the sophistication to deal with a subject matter like this well. I think when I've written about sort of personal tragedies in later recordings and later writings, I feel like I've maybe done it a bit more skillfully than this one. But anyway, here is the song. Well, nothing broke. You're fallen, so you fell down like concrete angels, like a nickel to the well, dragging a wish for silence. Friends all stand around and shake their heads and ask how it could be that nothing broke. You're fallen, so you fell. Well, nothing broke. You're fallen, so you fell. A heart so heavy with the drink, like a failure to the deep, dragging a wish for silence before the morning starts again. All desperate times and desperate men. Well, nothing broke. You're fallen, so you fell. Well, nothing broke. You're fallen, so you fell. Will heaven hold your broken spirit now? That's what you believed in. From a house of brittle things, from a room of splinters. Now tiny-minded thoughts I'll think, with someone else will pour my drinks tonight. 'Cause nothing broke. You're fallen, so you fell. Well, nothing broke. You're fallen, so you fell. Yeah, like I say, I'm very fond of that song. It's got no business being the last song on a record. Okay, right. I've done that one. Oh, I've done a few. Okay, let's do Oh, okay. Well, here's the thing. Even though the record was very, very difficult, and even though it wasn't the great hit that it was hoped it would be. I mean, there were a lot of people kind of with expectations and with investments. Like some people spend a lot of money on trying to make me famous. And when if I'm ever sort of talking smack about record labels, please understand that for the most part, I have nothing but gratitude for the attempt that they made to help me get my music into the world. It's I don't think anyone ever sort of took advantage of me, and like everything I did, I entered into as a grown up, and I have nothing but I pretty much, I mean, I can't think of any exceptions. I have pure affection for all of the labels that I have signed to and subsequently been dropped by, and some great friendships and some wonderful memories. Particularly, I have to say, when Songs to the Road came out in America, eventually at Columbia, I was a big favorite of the big bosses at Columbia. I'd come in there as some sort of great hope for the future, and then shortly after I arrived, there was some coup d'état, and the big bosses at Columbia Records were fired, and the ones who came in did not much care for me. And so I was out. I think it's probably the only time I've ever been dropped by a label when I didn't want to be. Like I still have. I mean, for me, Columbia Records is a very important, like, sacred institution. That the records that have come out on that label are, I mean, like actually the all of the best records ever made. Like with a few exceptions. Like my record collection is pretty much a Columbia Records. About half of them are through that label. So the fact that they ever put one of mine out was a big deal, and I was very fortunate to have been allowed for a moment on that stable, and I was very sad that it didn't work out. But it did at least mean that I then got to work with a label that was much more. Much better suited to me, a smaller label called Original Signal Recordings, based out of an office in New York City. I spent a lot of time there. I sort of became, I felt like anyway, I became sort of part of the furniture, one of the team, part of the family, and the friends that I made there remain my dear friends to this very day, and. So I was very fortunate in that regard, and I actually think that a smaller label suited me much better. I mean, again, we didn't sell any bloody records, but it was it wasn't about that, was it? It was about doing great and wonderful things, and if you can't sell your great and wonderful things, it doesn't mean they were any less great or any less wonderful. So. So the record was difficult to make. It was very difficult to release. It was difficult to tour. I spent 6 months in a single stint in the US, and at this point, like, I was not, I was not terribly well in the head. I wasn't. I was functional, but I was not. I was not in a great place, and I was spending a lot of time on my own on the road, sort of driving myself, and some of the journeys and the shows and the places where I was were not were not a terribly fun place to be. Like the 4 days I spent in Warrensburg, Missouri, in a motel just by the side of the freeway. I did end up actually recording a song there. There's a track called Missouri on the next record, on the Hard Times roll, that I recorded in my hotel room, largely using copyright violated voices from the TV. That's a side note. But anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that strangely, it was a song from this record that years later sort of came back to sort of help out a bit. Every now and then, I uh, I sort of I look at the way that music's going and I realize that this is I love it and I'll always do it, but as far as this being my job, I think we're done. I think I don't think this is sustainable. And it's been a good run. It's been 20 years of being just about sustainable, which is great. And please don't think that I think it's important that music pays the bills. Like, it's not. That's not what music's for. Music's not for paying the bills. It's for doing wonderful and incredible things and making songs and trying to to reach people's innermost feelings with your songs. It's not about paying the bills. Paying the bills is what getting a job is all about, and I'm happy to do that when the time comes. The time just has never come, but it's been close a few times, and I've gotten to the point of sort of writing lists of things I could do with myself to pay the bills when I sort of give up on letting music do it for me. And the closest I ever got was a few years back, and just as I was sort of formulating plans to maybe call it something like a day, I got a phone call to say that for some reason Johnny Hallyday, the greatest rock star in the history of the French language, was going to record I'm Alright Now from the Songs for the Road record, and he was going to do it in French. They got a new lyric for it, and I didn't hear much more about it until a few months later when I got a phone call to say it was on a Wednesday to say, what are you doing on Friday? Because you've got to go and collect your Grammy for Song of the Year, because Johnny's song's a big hit. And they gave me this, and I had to put on my suit and my hat and go and be on TV in France and go and collect this thing. And it was very strange, because it's the only time anyone's ever covered one of my songs and released it, and it was kind of a relatively big deal, and I'm hugely grateful to Johnny and to Bertrand, who's his A&R man, and to everyone who's involved in doing it, because as much as anything, in very crass financial terms, it helped out a bit, and it kept me on the road, and it kept me making music, and it meant I didn't have to go and get a job, and I got to do this a bit longer, and so in that respect, the only reason I'm talking to you now is that Johnny not only recorded the song but did an incredible job of it, as did Christophe, the lyricist, and Yves, the producer, and like everyone. It was a crazy thing to be part of, especially later on when they decided they wanted to then re-record the whole album in English. So I wrote some English lyrics to some of the French songs that were written in French, which I think Johnny, I went over to be there for the recording of one of the songs, but it never got released. I don't know if it'll ever see the light of day. It was not that easy. I was sort of on hand as English language vocal coach, and it's very difficult. Like French people sing English with an accent, and he really wanted to sound like an authentic, like, American English speaker, and it was very difficult to do. But the time I spent with Johnny Hallyday was incredible, very, very precious and inspiring. He was every inch the real deal. Like he lived rock and roll like he fucking meant it, and I think that authenticity is something that I think is quite awe-inspiring, really. So I've got a great deal of love for Johnny. May he rest in peace. And anyway, this is the song that I wrote. That, like I say, years after the event, sort of came back to, offer a little apology and pay the bills for a little while. The tide came in. Oh, let's have a bit of reverb on there. I'm going to tune up as well, because I'm not, if we're going to do this, let's do it properly. Okay, here we go. The tide came in and nearly buried us here. We saw things like they wouldn't believe. Hear a lot of stories about love and romance, but I swear nothing quite like you and me. And every scar sits like a marker, every line on the face is a small souvenir of all the places, be they good or be they bad, we stopped into on the journey to here. So maybe I lost my sense of direction, but I'm all right now. Every man needs a little affection, so I'm all right now. There were times when, yeah, alright, I'll confess, I did things of which I am not proud. Everybody wades through the same colored shit, but it doesn't drag everyone down. And I was stupid, I was insensitive, I was all the things I promised that I never would be. I've seen a lot of foolish behavior in my time, but I'll tell you, they've got nothing on me. So maybe I lost my sense of direction, but I'm all right now. Every man needs a little affection, so I'm all right now. Well, give me strength, give me something to believe in, and I'm all right now. Well, sing along when your heart's finished bleeding, and I'm all right now. Another evening of sublime self-destruction to the tune of 1,000 cigarettes, where every nail that's been hammered into your spirit wasn't able to sink you just yet. Your television's just some weak anesthetic to numb the senses till you're out like a light. Like all these drugs, they seem to promise you the earth, and then they don't keep you warm in the night. So maybe I lost my sense of direction, but I'm all right now. Every man needs a little affection, so I'm all right now. Give me strength, give me something to believe in, and I'm all right now. Well, sing along when your heart's finished bleeding, and I'm all It's like I cannot sleep for dreaming. This is everything I could have possibly hoped it would be. A lot of stories will end happy ever after, but I swear nothing quite like you and me. Thank you. All right, so I guess we're probably pretty much reaching the end now. Played most of the songs off Songs for the Road and probably shared a little more than I am comfortable to do with you. Let's just see if there's anything else. I understand publishing/songwriting is where the money is. Have you ever considered writing for anyone else? Well, frankly, fuck where the money is. It's not about that. Please stop talking to me about money. But since you ask, writing songs for other people is not something I've done a great deal. After I noticed that somebody mentioned this later on in the comments. I did then subsequently write 2 songs for Johnny Halliday's next album, which he recorded and were released and were singles, and yeah, they were relatively successful as well. So I've written three Johnny Hallyday songs were written by me, and that's pretty much it. Like, so the way that I run my game, that I run my career, if you want to call it that, is I don't ever try and do anything. And I know this sounds frankly reckless and a bit stupid, but it's always served me very well. Is I don't try to kind of hustle opportunities to do things, and I never have. Everything that I've had has either fallen into my lap, or it's just been the result of, you know, the hard work that I've done has paid off. So I've never sort of tried to achieve career goals. They've always sort of happened by accident, and I sort of believe that that's how it should be, and that my job is to be the best possible artist that I can be, and the worst possible promoter that I can be, and that's how I've managed to sustain my love for music, because I don't care about the business side of it. It doesn't. It's not important at all. It's like it's the least important part of the music business is the music business. Like, the most important part is the music bit, as far as I'm concerned. And I realize that I'm very, very lucky in that I always have been able to trust my luck, and my luck has always held out. But anyway, to answer the question, yeah, I'm well up for writing for anyone. Like but at the same time, you know, I'm not someone who's ever gonna sort of hustle for the work. If anyone ever asks me to write for someone, like I always have and I always will say yes. But you know, people don't ask that often, and I'm in this position now where I'm pretty much a one man deal. Like, I don't have, you know, machinery and people managing my affairs. But every now and then, like, you know, people will find me and contact me and say they want to use my song in a movie, or you know, these little opportunities arise, and I never chase them, and they keep coming up, and I like that, and I like that it happens, and it means that, you know, life's very unexpected, and it means that I'm not desperately trying to chase after anything, and it suits me well, and it keeps me looking young. So, like, let's just see. Any more questions? Was I'm Alright Now written about a specific relationship? Good question, Jason. Now, for the most part, I don't really write songs about myself specifically. Like, I'm not like a confessional songwriter, so I'm not sort of bleeding my own heart out. Essentially, what I'm doing is I'm sort of imagining characters and writing as them. It's for me, it comes more from a from my early desires to be in sort of theatre and write plays. Like I wanted to be a playwright before I wanted to be a musician, and so I think characters are important to me, and so because even though just because I'm singing the song and I'm using the first person, referring to me and I, it's not me. It's the character of the person who's singing the song, and it's very very rarely me. So I'm all right now is not it's not me. I'm not that person. Um, it's that there are you have to draw on your own experience, and I like to think that I always do that, but I'm certainly not sort of I'm not living out my experiences in songs. So it's not about a particular relationship at all. It's or rather it is about a particular relationship, but it's one that I made up and not one that I lived. So there you go. Right, uh let's just wrap it up, shall we? I wonder, is there anything that I haven't mentioned from the record? I'm sure there's loads I haven't mentioned. Maybe if anyone has any questions, I'll find a suitable forum, like Twitter or something. If anyone has any more questions that I haven't gotten around to that you'll really want to know, then do fire them at me, and I'll do my best to answer them. So I'm gonna end the show the way the bloody album should have ended, with its what was its title track. So the things you need to take away are because I've got to do my selling bit now. 2 weeks from now, like I say, if we can work it out, it'll either be it'll either be something else, or I'm hoping it's going to be this sort of live in the studio with this incredible band of musicians playing probably in its entirety an album that's not released yet. It's a pretty weird thing to do, to play a record that you can't get, but hopefully it'll whet your appetite for when eventually the record does come out. And also if you want to hear some of the embryonic versions of the songs, if you'd like to hear the recordings that I made that were so bad the label threw things at me, then I've put them on Bandcamp as well. So there's a whole treasure trove of interesting sort of side listens from the Songs for the Road era. Now, I want to leave you with the idea that, in fact, screw it. I'm gonna read you what I said about Songs for the Road. I glanced upon this earlier, and it kind of I should have actually. Here we go. So this is what I said 10 years ago about the record that I'd made sort of 3 years before that. So it was still relatively new then. So this was after the record had finished and it had been mixed and it had been mastered, and I listened to it from start to finish for the first time. I stood back and surveyed my masterpiece. It looked like a patchwork of rusted scrap held together with string and chicken shit. It was fragile and flawed and complicated and uncomfortable, like a fat old man in the nude. It had damaged me more than any trauma I had known, but somewhere in there it had this blood and guts survival instinct. It was a strange, dirty flower blooming in the glove compartment of a burned-out Ford Cortina, and I loved it. So it's funny. I didn't remember writing that, and then I glanced upon it today, and I thought, yeah, that's how I feel about it. It was difficult, and it was hard, but we got there, and it didn't kill me, and it wasn't the last record I ever made, and nothing ended with that record. It was still part of a lovely beginning. I may, if I could go back, do things differently, but I regret nothing. So with that in mind, please don't think that I still suffer from the trauma. I believe it it made me stronger in many ways. Made me a better songwriter, performer, musician. Maybe not person, but you can't have everything. Right, so I'm going to leave you with this. This is Song for the Road. Well, the day cast down lengthy shadows on unfamiliar towns, and I drove 300 miles from the place I call home, and I tip my hat to the angel of the north. And the sun, it set fire to the heavens on the hills over Sheffield tonight. And I will sail over this countryside with new friends and old, and we are nowhere, but man, we're all right. So you can keep your belief in whatever, and I'll wear my cynicism like a tattoo. And while poets try to engineer definitions of love, oh, you know that all I can think of is you. And I just can't wait to see you on Sunday, far from the traffic and the smoke and the noise. But for this evening, I will play back every message that you've sent, so I can sleep to the sound of your voice. Oh. Now, I don't lightly use words like forever, but I will love you till the end of today. And in the morning when I remember everything that you are, well, I know I'll fall for you over again. Now I know someday, well, this all will be over, and it's hard to say what most will I miss. Just give me one way to spend my last moments alive, and I choose this, 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 I choose this. Yeah, I choose this. Thank you very much, and good evening.